Part 18. I am immortal and I raise a divine beast in another world. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 171. It looks good. However, Chen Hao knew very well that the beast on the picture on the card was a lie. Chen Hao looked at Anna. Can you show it out? Anna had a professional smile on her face, of course. As she said that, she reached out and took the card that Chen Hao handed back. Transform. The card disappeared, and a fist-sized creature, shaped like a saber-toothed tiger, was made of magma. It sat on the ground and looked at Anna. The magma that made up its body flowed slowly in its body, and its body looked a little loose, which made people feel uncomfortable. This thing is not the type that Chen Hao likes. This thing is not good looking, and it is estimated to be hot. It is not the type that I like. What do you think, sir? Anna looked at Chen Hao. Chen Hao shook his head. Not very good. Are there any other ones? He looked at Anna. Anna was startled, and she smiled and said, yes. Transform. Anna put away the little lava beast and put it back on the counter. She took out another card from the counter and handed it to Chen Hao. Chen Hao looked at it. Cub stage little snow spirit. Taming degree, 0. Chen Hao blinked his eyes. Is it a monster formed by snow-absorbing water magic elements? He smiled. Interesting. Anna smiled and said, this little guy was found by the A-level Green Snake Adventure team when they were hunting the snow girl in the Ice Mountain. The Ice Mountain is a forbidden place for humans, and few people go there. This time the Green Snake Adventure team took a huge risk to go there. At the same time, the little snowman is a very rare monster. Even in a place like the Ice Mountain, it is rare. Chen Hao looked at the little thing made of snow in the picture. This little thing is somewhat similar to the little water spirit. They both have human shapes and do not have facial features. It is just a little man. Water magic elements condense in Wolong Island, but it does not snow there. Because the temperature of Wolong Island is not enough to constitute the conditions for snowing, this kind of monster did not appear. This little thing is quite interesting. Chen Hao's heart moved, and he looked at Anna. You said, there is a snow girl in the Ice and Snow Mountain. The snow girl has appeared in myths and legends, but Chen Hao didn't expect that this thing also exists in this world. Moreover, the A-level adventure group would actually choose to hunt this thing. Anna looked at Chen Hao and said with a smile, don't you know, guest. There is a snow girl in the Ice and Snow Mountain. The snow girl is an awakening monster. If this level of monster appears in a small country, it is enough to destroy a country. Even if the A-level adventure group goes to hunt, it is very dangerous. That set of Green Snake Adventure Group also paid a lot of money to successfully hunt and bring it back. Through the information Chen Hao obtained in the Adventurers Guild today. In the Adventurers Guild, there are 3 types of existence that can accept tasks. One is a one-person adventurer, the second is a 5-person adventure team, and the third is an adventure group of more than 12 people. The influence of a single adventurer is limited. The larger the adventure group, the greater the influence, but at the same time, the level of the adventure group is the most difficult to improve. The adventure group that can be upgraded to a level shows that its strength is very strong. A-level adventure groups have to pay a price to hunt the snow girl. However, it is normal, after all, it is an awakening monster. Maybe we can go to the Ice and Snow Mountain to have a look. Thinking about it, Chen Hao smiled and said, I want this little snow spirit. Anna smiled, okay, then sir, do you need other beasts? Anything else? Chen Hao looked at Anna. Anna had a professional smile on her face. Top quality monsters like the little lava beast and the little snow spirit are very rare. At present, we only have these 2 here, and we will continue to purchase them later. If you need it, sir, you can look at other monster cubs. Among the monster cubs, we also have top quality ones. Chen Hao looked at the other monster cubs on the counter, glanced at them, and shook his head. Forget it, just this little snow spirit will do. The rest of the monsters looked ordinary. Okay, Anna responded politely. After buying the little snow spirit, Chen Hao came out of the store. Ice and Snow Mountain, right. Chen Hao took out the map and looked at it. The Snow Mountain is located at the northernmost end of the WAF continent, quite far from here. Let's go and have a look. It's just right. I was just thinking of doing an experiment. After Chen Hao looked at the location, he put away the map and took out the instant transfer card. Target, Snow Mountain. Transform. The card turned into black mist, enveloping Chen Hao and Xiaoying. The man and the beast turned into black light and instantly flew into the sky, and instantly disappeared into the sky. Chen Hao's darkness disappeared, and the surrounding environment changed in an instant. A chill came from all around. There was snow under his feet, and it was all white. Snowflakes fell from his eyes. But these snowflakes did not touch Chen Hao's body. Because Chen Hao was surrounded by a black magic shield, the magic shield blocked the snowflakes. Chen Hao looked at Xiaoying on his shoulder. Xiaoying in the form of a rabbit had stood up. It raised its two pairs of black ears and looked around. This black magic shield was naturally the magic used by Xiaoying. This little guy has been paying attention to the changes in the surrounding environment, ready to protect Chen Hao at any time. Chen Hao smiled, retracted his gaze, and looked around. If this place was placed in the previous life, I would probably have been frozen to death. As Chen Hao spoke, he took out the biosensor. Turning on the sensor, a map was projected. On the map, Chen Hao could see 3 big red dots, but no small red dots. Big red dots, if I'm not mistaken, that should be where the snow girl is. But, there are too few. You know, when Chen Hao was on Wolong Island before, he just found a place to open the map. Even if the map of this biosensor was not big, he could still see many big and small red dots. But in this place, the map displayed by the biosensor only had 3 big red dots, and no small red dots. In other words, is there little magic here? Chen Hao muttered. Master, the magic content here is about the same as that of the Warcraft forest, but not as good as Wolong Island. Xiaoying's voice sounded in his ears. Hearing this, Chen Hao nodded slightly. It's similar to the monster forest, but the number of monsters is less than that of the monster forest. Is it because the temperature here is relatively cold and not suitable for the growth of organisms? No wonder the people of the Green Snake Adventure Group only found a small snow spirit. There are too few monsters in this place. Chen Hao was too lazy to think about it. Book. The book appeared in front of Chen Hao. Chen Hao opened the book and took out the card of the Charming Flower Fairy from it. It's just right to use the Charming Flower Fairy with the animal trap rope to do an experiment. I am immortal and I raise a divine beast in another world. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 172. Change. The figure of the Charming Flower Fairy appeared in front of Chen Hao. After it came out, it closed its eyes at first, and then slowly opened them. Seeing Chen Hao, the Charming Flower Fairy's eyes lit up slightly, and a smile appeared on its face. Master. Chen Hao nodded slightly. I need your help with something. The Flower Fairy smiled charmingly. The Flower Fairy all depends on the master's instructions. Chen Hao looked at the map in his hand, and then led Huaxian and Xiaoying towards the big red dot closest to him. As he got closer to the big red spot, Chen Hao could feel the temperature around him getting lower and lower. Chen Hao looked forward, and through the spacious snow field, he saw a man sitting on a stone. It is indeed a person. But it is very different from people. It has white hair, white skin, a blue ice crystal-like headdress on its hair, and a white robe as white as snow. A pair of ice crystal-like pupils can be seen on its snow-white face, and its eyebrows and lips are white. Chen Hao took out the biometric identification device and pointed it at the person. Under identification. Identification successful. Awakening period. Snow Girl. Snow Girl, a monster with dual attributes of Feng Shui, evolved from the Snow King who absorbed a large amount of magic. She looks like a human, has a beautiful appearance and extremely powerful wind and snow magic. It was indeed a Snow Girl. This thing is different from a human being, but it is the most human-like monster during the awakening period that Chen Hao has ever seen. The Snow Girl seemed to feel something. She raised her head and looked here. Their eyes met. The Snow Girl's sapphire-like eyes suddenly condensed. She stood up, and the wind and snow began to rotate crazily around her. Suddenly, a strong wind swept towards Chen Hao with white snow. A sneer sounded in Chen Hao's ears. Pieces of rose petals flew out and hit the oncoming wind and snow. The wind and snow were dispersed by rose petals. These petals are naturally the wood magic that charms the flower fairy. The Snow Girl frowned, and there was a hint of solemnity on her face. Chen Hao looked at the charming flower fairy beside him. There was disdain in the charming flower fairy's eyes, and the corners of her mouth were raised. In its eyes, the awakening Snow Girl was too weak. Chen Hao said, "Flower fairy, use your fairy charm to control it." The charming flower fairy was startled, then nodded slightly and looked at the Snow Girl with squinted eyes. The Snow Girl noticed that when the flower fairy looked at it, its pupils were slightly condensed and confusion appeared on its face. After being confused, its eyes glowed, its expression calmed down, and the wind and snow surrounding it also returned to calm. Chen Hao looked at the flower fairy, "Let it come over." The flower fairy nodded slightly and looked at the Snow Girl, "Did you hear that? The master asked you to come over." The Snow Girl's body floated this way. "Yes, it's coming. This guy is dressed in white. Although he has feet, he doesn't use them to walk at all. His whole body is directly riding on the wind, floating this way. Like a ghost." Chen Hao blinked when he saw it. "If you see this thing floating over like this at night, your soul will be scared out." The Snow Girl flew in front of Chen Hao and the flower fairy. She looked at the flower fairy and said, "Master." The corners of Waxian's mouth raised, and then he looked at Chen Hao, "Master, do you want me to order it to commit suicide?" Chen Hao said, "I want to do an experiment. Can you use your magic to command it to completely surrender to me? Do you recognize me as your master?" Chen Hao had this idea before. When Chen Hao tamed adult monsters before, the adult monsters had hunger levels, so they could be tamed into adult monsters by feeding them. But the problem is that the monster does not need to eat. It has no hunger level. No matter how long it is hungry, it will not starve. There is no way to tame it by feeding. However, when Dalong found Erlong, Chen Hao discovered something. To improve the tameness of adult monsters, it is not just about feeding them. Like the second dragon, before the second dragon became his master beast, it was threatened by the fire phoenix and had to surrender to him. Later, the second dragon became his own beast. Without any feeding, its tameness reached 100% the next day. In other words, if a magical beast has surrendered to itself and recognized itself as its master before turning into a beast, then it can directly become 100% tame after turning into a card. This method may also be effective in catching adult monsters. But how do you make the monsters surrender to you before they are turned into cards? You can use the method of threatening the fire phoenix to threaten the second dragon and make the second dragon obey. Is there another way besides this? For example, use fairy magic to charm flower fairies. Directly brainwash and make them surrender to you. What Chen Hoping has to do now is to conduct this experiment. If the experiment succeeds, then you can catch as many adult monsters as you want. Thinking of Chen Hao made me excited. And now this Snow Girl can be used as the material for the experiment. The flower fairy smiled, "Yes, My fairy charm can make the creature I look at become my slave forever. Whatever I ask it to do, it will do whatever it wants. After saying that, the flower fairy looked at the snow girl and said, "Little beauty, do you hear this? From now on, my master will be your master, and you will be the master's slave. Whatever the master asks you to do, you have to do it, you know." Hearing Huasian's little beauty voice, Chen Hao didn't know how to evaluate Huasian. When the snow girl heard this, she looked at Chen Hao, put her hand on her chest and saluted slightly, "Master." Chen Hao stretched out his hand to Xuanu, "Give me your hand." To turn Warcraft and monsters into cards, Chen Hao has currently used two methods. The first is to touch it to turn it into a card, for example, when catching the wind wolf cub. The second type is the animal trapping rope. Chen Hao wanted to try the first method, whether to turn it into a card by touching it when it has surrendered to him. When the snow girl heard this, she obediently stretched out her hand and handed it to Chen Hao. Chen Hao stretched out his hand and shook it, "Change." The moment he said these words, Chen Hao had expectations. Suddenly, the Yukiana's body disappeared and turned into a card. A card floated in front of Chen Hao. Looking at the card in front of him, Chen Hao's eyes suddenly lit up. Success. Chen Hao stretched out his hand and took the card. Awakening period Snow Girl. Taming degree, 100%. Seeing this, the corners of Chen Hao's mouth rose. A feeling of joy came over me. Chen Hao suddenly had an excited smile on his face. Ha ha. Chen Hao couldn't help laughing. Success. Chen Hao's face was full of smiles. The experiment was successful. In this way, only the charming flower fairy is there, then, the monsters or monsters whose realm is weaker than the charming flower fairy. You can conquer them all directly in this way. Charm the flower fairy with Minotaur magic. It's simply a magical skill. Chen Hao looked at charming flower fairy. But he saw the charming flower fairy looking at him with a smile on his face, with joy in his brows. Seeing Chen Hao happy, it was also happy. Chen Hao smiled, "Well done. Let's go and catch other snow girls and play with them." The charming flower fairy blinked and smiled, "Okay. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I am immortal and I raise a divine beast in another world. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 173. Chen Hao spent another afternoon and captured 11 snow girls and 8 snow monsters with the help of the charming flower demon during the holy period. The snow monster is a large monster that is covered with thick white long hair and is 3 meters tall. According to Chen Hao's judgment, the snow girl and the snow monster should both be the evolved bodies of the little snow spirit. The snow girl takes the magic route, while the snow monster takes the comprehensive route. It was dusk. Chen Hao could clearly feel that the sky was getting darker. He raised his head and looked at the sky. The sky was gray and the sun could not be seen. "It's almost time, it's time to go back," Chen Hao muttered. Boom, there was a loud noise. Hearing the sound, Chen Hao subconsciously looked towards the source of the sound. "Master, there are strong fluctuations of water magic over there." Xiao Ying's voice came to his ears. "It seems that there are people fighting over there." "Fighting?" Chen Hao raised his eyebrows. "There's nothing to do when we go home anyway, so let's go over and take a look first." When Xiao Ying heard this, he nodded slightly. Chen Hao, Xiao Ying, and Huaxian disappeared together. After Chen Hao came to his senses, the surrounding environment changed. He saw a man. It was a handsome man, wearing silver light armor and holding a long sword. He was lying on the ground at the moment, with deep marks left on the snow. He held the hilt of the sword, inserted the sword into the snow, supported his body and stood up slowly. He raised his hand to wipe the blood from the corner of his mouth with his sleeve, and stared straight ahead. In front of the man is a snow monster. Seeing this, Chen Hao understood. It's humans hunting the Yeti. It looked like this man had just been hit by a snow monster. Interesting. A smile full of interest appeared on Chen Hao's face. Chen Hao had seen humans when he lived in the Warcraft forest, and he had also seen humans when he was on Wolong Island, but in those places, Chen Hao had never seen humans hunting monsters with his own eyes. Only when I was in the abyss of death, I saw the old sword god hunting monsters, but the hunting of the old sword god was not actually hunting. It could only be a unilateral crushing of strength and pure massacre. The man in front of me was fighting a snow monster. He seemed to have never fought a snow monster before. This situation is somewhat interesting. Chen Hao wanted to see what it was like for normal humans to hunt monsters. The snow monster stared at the man and opened its mouth. Roar. The snow monster roared, stepped forward, and rushed towards the man. The man snorted and whispered, "Strengthen your sword skills." His body lit up slightly. The man squinted his eyes. Sword skills, strengthened to the second level. His body lit up again. Immediately, the man moved. He stepped forward and faced the snow monster. Chen Hao looked at him and raised his eyebrows. "Are you so strong?" The snow monster is different from the snow girl. The defense power of the snow monster is considered to be B level during the awakening period. Although it is not the top level, it is not weak either. It is quite difficult for a human to confront a snow monster head-on. When the snow monster saw the man approaching, it roared, "Ho!" It slapped its claws towards the man. The man squinted his eyes and said, "Sword skills, 3-foot sword light." He waved his hand, and the tip of the long sword lit up with white light, and the white light turned into a 3-foot long sword light. The sword light swept towards the palm of the snow monster, accompanied by the sound of flesh and blood being separated. The snow monster's arm snapped off. The man stepped on the ground, jumped up, and jumped up. Roar, the snow monster's arm was cut off, and it roared. When it saw the man jump up, it stretched out its left hand and suddenly grasped the man's body. The man's pupils condensed, he gritted his teeth, held the hilt of the sword with both hands, and swung the sword light towards the snow monster's neck. The sword light passed over the snow monster's neck. The snow monster's head fell off. Bang! The snow monster's huge body fell down. The man jumped up and stood on the ground. His legs softened and he knelt down on one knee. Chiang, the long sword stabbed the ground, and he barely kept his balance. Chen Hao could see that the man's other hand was covering his ribs, and blood spilled from the corner of his mouth. When the snow monster grabbed the man just now, it didn't just grab him, it also held him. At that moment, the force generated by an ordinary person would have crushed the bones and internal organs. Chen Hao muttered, he just used the sword skills to strengthen his body twice. Through the sword skills, his strength withstood the power of the snow monster, so he was not crushed to death. However, it looked like he was seriously injured. The man closed his eyes and whispered, "Sword skills, self-healing." A green light lit up slightly on his body. The man adjusted his breath, wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, stood up, and put the long sword back into the sheath on his waist. While doing this action, he seemed to feel something and subconsciously looked in the direction of Chen Hao. Seeing Chen Hao, the man was slightly startled, with a hint of vigilance in his eyes. "Who?" Hearing this, Chen Hao smiled and said, "I'm just a traveler passing by." The man's eyebrows furrowed, and he looked at Chen Hao. "Demon? Human?" As he said that, he looked at the charming flower fairy next to Chen Hao, and there was a trace of doubt in his eyes. Such a strong scent of wood magic, a magician. The man looked away and looked at Chen Hao. "Demon?" Chen Hao smiled, "My name is Chen Hao. I am a human. This is my beast. I call it Flower Fairy." The man was slightly startled. "Beast Master," he looked at the Flower Fairy, "human-shaped Beast Master. The beast masters in the saint stage can transform into human form, but not everyone knows this. The man did not know the charming flower fairy, so at first glance he thought she was a magician of the wood attribute. Chen Hao said, "Change." The charming flower fairy disappeared and turned into a card. Chen Hao picked up the card and shook it at the man, and said with a smile, "Well, it's just a special beast master that has evolved into a human form. It's nothing." As he said, Chen Hao put the card away. Seeing this, the man's frowned eyebrows slowly stretched out. There are many kinds of beast masters, and there is basically no one who can know all of them. It is not surprising that there are human forms among those beast masters that humans have never seen. After all, there are also beast masters like the snow girl who look very much like humans. The beast master has a beast master who looks like a human. Although it is novel, it is still within the range of human acceptance. The man looked at Chen Hao. "My name is Parker, my last name is Lei Yi. Who are you? What are you doing here?" Hearing this, Chen Hao raised his eyebrows. "Lei Yi, this last name is familiar. Master, the old sword god before was named Lei Yi." "Sword god?" Chen Hao looked at Parker and said, "Are you the son of the sword god?" Parker looked at Chen Hao strangely. "The sword god is my great-grandfather." When Parker said this, Chen Hao's brain froze. Great-grandfather? Great-grandfather should be the father of grandfather. In other words, this Parker is the son of the sword god's grandson. Great-grandson. I am immortal and I raise a divine beast in another world. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 174. As expected of an old swordsman, he lived a long time. However, you are such a strange person. Parker looked at Chen Hao strangely and said, "No one in VAF continent knows my name and identity as Parker, but you can actually ask such a question. Are you really a human being?" He doubted Chen Hao's identity. It's no wonder that he would be suspicious. After all, Parker is a guy who has a blood relationship with the sword god. Anyone who is human will know him. But Chen Hao didn't know. Not only did he not know, he also asked such an outrageous question. No wonder Parker was suspicious. Chen Hao smiled. "I have lived alone for too long and have not had much contact with human society, so I don't understand some common sense." "It's your grandpa, I've met him before." Chen Hao thought of the old sword god and said with a smile, "The old sword god is an interesting old man." Parker looked at Chen Hao. "Wait for me." "Wait for him?" Parker walked up to the snow monster and put his hand on the snow monster. Change. The body of the snow monster turned into a card. Parker put away the cards and looked at Chen Hao. When Chen Hao saw Parker's eyes, he could see a hint of fighting spirit in Parker's eyes. He held the sword at his waist. "Chiang!" With a sword cry, he pulled the sword out of its scabbard. After pulling out his sword, Parker stared at Chen Hao. "What you just said has caused me a lot of doubts. I can't be sure whether you are an enemy or a friend. My family has ancestral teachings. If you can't tell whether a person is an enemy or a friend, when making friends, speak with your sword. So." He raised his hand and pointed the tip of his sword directly at Chen Hao. "Fight with me and let your sword speak." This. Chen Hao's eyebrows stretched. It is truly worthy of being the family of the old sword god, so resolute and resolute. Using fighting to test whether a person is good or bad was simply crazy in Chen Hao's previous life. But in this world, this approach seems to be possible. Chen Hao had heard someone say before that if one person is hostile to another, it will be exposed during the sparring session. If a stranger wanted to hide his hostility, Parker could find out just by sparring with him. This approach is indeed feasible in this world. How about using him to test the power of my stick? No, it could easily kill him. The old sword god not only gave me a bunch of magic crystals, but also gave me sword skills and killed his blood relatives. This is too much. Although this guy has a face that makes me feel jealous, he is a stubborn person and needs to be beaten. So be it. Chen Hao looked at Parker and said with a smile, I am a beast master. Let's do this. I will let my beast fight with you. Parker was startled and said, that one just now. Chen Hao shook his head, no, that little guy has no fighting ability. I'll replace him with one who has fighting ability. As he spoke, Chen Hao called out the book. He flipped through the book and took out a card from it. Change. The card disappears. A figure appeared in front of Chen Hao and Parker. This is a skeleton man wearing golden armor. When it came out now, it was holding a book in its right hand, and it was reading. However, when the beast was first summoned, its eyes were closed. So its pupils are empty black. Its pupils glowed a little red, and it looked away from the page and looked at Chen Hao. As soon as he saw Chen Hao, he closed the book, stood up seriously, put his hand on his chest, and bent slightly towards Chen Hao, Master. Chen Hao glanced at the book held by the golden skeleton sword master, and his heart moved. Could it be said that it can also be read when it is just inside the card? Chen Hao looked at the golden skeleton sword master and asked with a smile, can you understand? When the golden skeleton sword master heard this, he raised his head and looked at Chen Hao. I probably understand a little bit. Can you use it? Chen Hao asked. The golden skeleton sword master nodded, everyone who understands has learned it. Chen Hao smiled, give me the book first, so you can show me those sword skills. Chen Hao took the book from the golden skeleton sword master. He looked at the golden skeleton sword master and said, where is the magic crystal? The golden skeleton sword master explained, the magic crystal is in my body, do you want to take it out? Chen Hao smiled, no, I thought if the magic crystal is still outside, I will help you get it. Since it is already in the body, there is no need for me to get it. With that said, Chen Hao looked at Parker who was not far away. When Parker saw the golden skeleton sword master, his face was no longer as calm as it was at first. His eyes were trembling slightly, and his handsome face became pale and bloodless at this moment. Fear. Chen Hao saw strong fear in Parker's eyes. Chen Hao had doubts. Strange. The golden skeleton sword master is not as scary as the bone dragon. From the appearance, the golden skeleton sword master is not handsome yet. Does Parker need to be so afraid? Chen Hao said, Parker. When Parker heard Chen Hao's voice, his body trembled. Clang. Chen Hao glanced at the sword that fell from Parker's hand. He frowned. Are you so scared? Parker came to his senses and quickly picked up the sword that fell on the ground. He looked at Chen Hao. At this moment, Parker was covered in sweat and his face was pale. He looked like someone who had just come back from hell. Apparently, he was terrified. Chen Hao showed a friendly smile and said, don't be afraid, it is also my beast. Without my order, it will not hurt anyone. Parker swallowed his saliva, his hand holding the hilt trembled slightly, and his eyes looked at the golden skeleton sword saint. What kind of monster is this? This breath is too terrible. Breath. Chen Hao looked at the golden skeleton sword saint, do you have any breath? The golden skeleton sword saint heard it and said, it may be the magic pressure I released unintentionally. Collected Chen Hao frowned, he is a blood relative of my friend, don't scare him. Okay, master, the golden skeleton sword saint responded. Then Chen Hao could see that the faint black mist surrounding the golden skeleton sword saint quickly sank into the body of the golden skeleton sword saint. The black mist around the golden skeleton sword saint disappeared, and the black mist in its body seemed to be more solid. Seeing this, Chen Hao nodded slightly and looked at Parker. Chen Hao smiled and said, sorry, I didn't know about this. It has taken back the magic pressure. Do you feel better now? Parker swallowed his saliva, looked at Chen Hao, and then looked at the golden skeleton sword saint. His face was still not very good. He held the hilt tightly and looked at the golden skeleton sword saint nervously. Chen Hao looked at Parker's expression and touched his chin. Well, Parker, don't worry too much, it's my beast, it won't hurt you. Parker was startled, and his eyes fell on Chen Hao again. Chen Hao saw Parker looking at him. Chen Hao showed a friendly and healing smile, and said with a smile, then, if you want to fight, I will let it be your opponent. Don't worry, I promise it won't kill you. I am immortal and I raise a divine beast in another world. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 175. When Parker heard this, his eyes trembled, and he opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but he didn't know how to say it. Chen Hao could see Parker's hesitation. In fact, Parker could have simply said not to fight. But Parker couldn't speak. Why? After Chen Hao thought about it for a moment, he understood. Parker probably realized that he was no match for the Golden Skeleton Sword Master, but he had just declared war and to back down now would be an embarrassment to the family. Family glory is really harmful. However, it's just right. Chen Hao also wanted to see if the Golden Skeleton Sword Master had learned sword skills. Chen Hao looked at the Golden Skeleton Sword Master and said, fight him for a while and let me see how you use your sword skills. Then, a very important point is that he is a blood relative of my friend, so you are not allowed to hurt him. When the Golden Skeleton Sword Master heard this, he nodded slightly, yes. As he spoke, the Golden Skeleton Sword Master slowly turned around, looked at Parker not far away, and then walked towards Parker. When Parker looked at him, his face turned pale, and he did not dare to raise the hand holding the sword hilt, as the Golden Skeleton Sword Master approached. Parker's right hand subconsciously moved back an inch, but after moving out this inch, he moved his foot back. Chen Hao saw this detail. Chen Hao showed an approving smile. Although the Golden Skeleton Sword Master has taken back his magic pressure, the fear given to Parker by the Golden Skeleton Sword Master has been engraved into Parker's soul. Now Parker probably wanted to turn around and run away, but family honor made him lose this option. In this way, he can only face his fear. Chen Hao said with a smile, Parker, be brave, it won't hurt you. Parker was startled and frowned. He took a deep breath, held the hilt of the sword with both hands, and opened his mouth and said, I am the great-grandson of the Sword God, and I represent the glory of the Sword God family. In the first sentence, his voice was very low. Then he loudly said, I am the great-grandson of the Sword God. I represent the glory of the Sword God family. Seeing this, Chen Hao stretched his eyebrows and smiled on his face, haha, are you planning to use the power of voice to dispel your fear and gain courage? It's really interesting. Chen Hao had only heard of this situation before. He heard that during wars, soldiers would be afraid of death, so soldiers would yell when charging to dispel the fear. I didn't expect to see such people in real life, it's so interesting. Sword skills, strengthen. His body lit up slightly. Sword skills, strengthen to the second level. His body lit up again. Sword skills, 3-foot sword light. Parker held the hilt of the sword with both hands. He looked directly at the oncoming Golden Skeleton Sword Master and shouted, I will never embarrass my family. The Golden Skeleton Sword Master looked at the oncoming Parker and raised his right hand. When Chen Hao thought that the Golden Skeleton Sword Master was about to draw his sword, he found that it did not draw its sword, but raised its middle finger. Seeing this, Chen Hao knew that the Golden Skeleton Sword Master was following his order not to kill Parker, so it didn't use a real sword. The middle finger raised meant, use your middle finger instead of a sword? It's just that, the middle finger culture unique to the world in Chen Hao's previous life made Chen Hao feel a little uncomfortable when he saw this scene. Next time I have to let him use a finger instead of a sword, Chen Hao muttered. Sword skills, strengthen, the Golden Skeleton Sword Master suddenly said. Along with the voice of the golden skeleton sword master sounded. Its body lights up with white light, and the light covers it. Chen Hao's eyes lit up. Sword skills. Chen Hao had read the sword god's sword skills experience before when he was bored. Sword skills, strengthening, are to strengthen all the abilities of the entire body, such as defense, offense, speed, and other abilities. Parker also used the sword skill just now, but the white light emitted by Parker's sword skill was not bright. But the white light emitted by the golden skeleton sword master used the sword skill to be particularly bright. The white light adheres to the golden skeleton sword master, and the entire body of the golden skeleton sword master looks much whiter. Parker's pupils condensed, and there was a hint of shock in his eyes. A beast master with sword skills, Parker's face showed disbelief. But at this moment, he didn't dare to stop. Because he knew that as soon as he stopped, he might never dare to rush again. Sword skills, strengthened to the second level. The golden skeleton sword master spoke again. Its body lit up again, this time with a light golden light. Chen Hao had a smile on his face. Parker gritted his teeth. Sword skills, 3-foot sword light. At this moment, Parker and the golden skeleton sword master were close enough, and the long sword in Parker's hand spit out 3 feet of sword light. The sword light flicked and swept towards the body of the golden skeleton sword master. The sword light hit the ribs of the golden skeleton sword master. Clang. Click. Accompanied by a crisp sound. The long sword in Parker's hand broke into 2 pieces. Parker's pupils trembled as he looked at the broken sword in his hand, and he looked at the ribs where the golden skeleton sword master was hit. The rib was still intact, gleaming under the white halo and light golden halo, without leaving even a trace. Parker's mouth was slightly open and he stared blankly. Sword skills, 3-foot sword radiance. Suddenly, Parker heard a sound. He looked at the golden skeleton sword master, only to find that the golden skeleton sword master's raised middle finger spit out a 3-foot long sword light. The golden skeleton sword master waved his hand, and the sword light swept towards Parker's neck. It suddenly stopped 3 inches away from Parker's neck. Parker's legs softened and he sat on the ground. He looked at the guy in front of him with trembling eyes, a beast master who knows sword skills, 3 feet of sword light. The sword light in the hand of the golden skeleton sword saint dissipated, and it slowly stepped back 2 steps, looked at Parker, and said politely, "Sir, you are defeated." Parker swallowed his saliva. Little skeleton. Suddenly, Chen Hao's voice came. The golden skeleton sword saint looked at Chen Hao. Chen Hao walked over with a smile on his face, looked at the golden skeleton sword saint, and said with a smile, "Well done." The golden skeleton sword saint raised his hand, put it on his chest, bowed slightly around Chen Hao, and said respectfully, "Everything is for the master's service." Chen Hao smiled, and waved his hand, "Take it." The book flew to the golden skeleton sword saint, and the golden skeleton sword saint stretched out his hand and caught the book. Chen Hao looked at Parker and said with a smile, "Now you can be sure whether I am an enemy or a friend." Parker looked at Chen Hao, he took a deep breath, calmed down, raised his hand, wiped the sweat from his forehead, and slowly stood up. "If you are an enemy, I am already dead." And Parker glanced at the book in the hand of the golden skeleton sword saint, 3-foot sword light, "That is a sword skill that only people in my family can use. Your beast master can use this move, which means that you really know my grandfather." Speaking of this, Parker paused, then looked at Chen Hao. He raised his hand and placed it in front of his chest, and then saluted Chen Hao slightly. Chen Hao was startled. "You are?" After Parker saluted, he stood up and looked at Chen Hao. "I think the aura displayed by the beast masters trained by the senior is no weaker than that of the semi-saint stage. Semi-saint stage beast masters, you know my great-grandfather, so you should be of the same generation as my great-grandfather. Parker just pointed his sword at you." Parker was rude. Chen Hao blinked and smiled, "Nothing, just a small matter, and besides, I also find this matter quite interesting. Parker was startled and smiled bitterly. Parker thought, just now I was fighting this monster with a desperate attitude of death, but in the end, for this senior, it was just interesting. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I am immortal and I raise a divine beast in another world. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 176. Chen Hao looked at Parker, who was smiling awkwardly, and said with a smile, I just saw you fighting with the snow monster. You must be injured. Parker was startled. It's okay. I can heal myself. As long as it's not fatal, I can heal myself. Hearing this, Chen Hao nodded slightly. Sword skills also have such magical functions. That's right, sword skills use some kind of energy. Since abilities like wood magic element and light magic element can heal the human body, then fighting spirit can naturally do it. Chen Hao retracted his gaze. What are you going to do next? Parker explained, Senior, I am now a great swordsman. My father said that the fighting spirit in my body is comparable to that of a sword saint. He asked me to go to this ice and snow mountain to train and find an opportunity to break through. I plan to stay in this ice and snow mountain for a while, find a snow monster or a snow girl to fight, and after breaking through to the sword saint level, I will go down the mountain. Chen Hao was slightly stunned. He looked at Parker. Isn't that dangerous? I saw that you were not so relaxed when fighting with the snow monster. The sword saint can barely be compared with the weak chicken monster in the semi-saint period. Below the sword saint is the great sword master. Among the great sword masters, there are strong and weak ones. Some weaker great sword masters can't even beat the monsters in the Beast King stage. Like Parker, as a member of the sword god family, the sword skills he has learned are not comparable to those of ordinary sword masters. It can be seen from the fact that he can kill a snow monster in the awakening stage with the strength of a great sword master. But the problem is that even if his sword skills are excellent, he needs to pay a big price to defeat a snow monster in the awakening stage. In this case, it is not low for him to stay in this ice and snow mountain. Parker looked at Chen Hao seriously. If a sword master wants to become stronger, then he must experience the baptism of fear and death. Only in that case can he do it. I came to the ice and snow mountain to train in order to find a breakthrough opportunity. I have prepared myself for the possibility of death. Parker looked serious. Hearing this, Chen Hao stretched his eyebrows. The Parker in front of him looked very young, and it was estimated that he was no more than 30 years old at most. It is very difficult to become stronger in this world. The stronger you are, the older you are. This is the truth of this world. Parker can reach the realm of a great swordsman at such a young age. In addition to the fact that he comes from the sword god family, his own efforts are also the key. However, he is really desperate. If Chen Hao is replaced by Parker, Chen Hao will never put himself in such a dangerous situation. After all, this is a gamble with his life. If you win the bet, it is indeed possible to break through, but if you lose, then everything is over. There are various ways to break through, but there is only one life. Of course, this is Chen Hao's solution to the problem. This method is suitable for Chen Hao, not Parker. Chen Hao nodded slightly. He showed a friendly smile, and said with a smile, then you come on, I won't hinder you. Parker was startled and said, Senior is leaving. Chen Hao hummed, it's almost time. I only had breakfast today. It's almost evening now. I have to go back to eat. As he said, Chen Hao flipped the book in front of him and took out an instant transfer card from the card slot of the book. Chen Hao looked at Parker and said with a smile, I hope you are still alive when we meet next time. Bye. Chen Hao looked at the card in his hand. Destination, Wolong Island. Transform. The card turned into black mist, enveloping Chen Hao and Xiaoying standing on Chen Hao's shoulder. In an instant, Chen Hao and Xiaoying turned into black light and flew into the sky, and then disappeared in the blink of an eye. Parker looked at the place where Chen Hao disappeared, his eyes full of surprise. Is this the legendary teleportation magic? He raised his head and looked at the sky. So young, but has such a powerful beast master. Chen Hao, my grandfather's friend. Parker murmured, it's unbelievable that there is such a powerful beast master in this world, and he also has a teleportation magic card. For Parker, in Chen Hao's view, Parker is just a passerby, a chance meeting, a little chat, that's all. Chen Hao returned to Wolong Island, and as soon as he returned to Wolong Island, the environment changed. Chen Hao could see the red sky to the west of Wolong Island. Master, suddenly, a voice came from the side. Chen Hao came back to his senses and looked around, only to see Shui Yi and the other little guys surrounding him. They all had smiles on their faces, looking at Chen Hao happily. Shui Yi, as a representative, stood in the front, and said with a smile, Master, we also protected the house well today. Chen Hao blinked and smiled. He squatted down, stretched out his hand, picked up Shui Yi, and let it sit in his arms. He looked at Shui Yi's baby face and said with a smile, Shui Yi, great. Shui Yi smiled, her face full of happiness. Master, Shui Yi are also helped, Shui Yi are also wants a hug. Chen Hao was stunned, he looked at Shui Yi also looked at Chen Hao expectantly. Shui Wu also wants one. Me too. Master, I want one too. Chen Hao smiled and said, okay, hug them all, hug them all. The 0-degree elves came over one by one and lined up. Chen Hao was in a good mood, picked them up one by one, and then lifted them up high. Oh! Lifted up high. These little guys were full of excitement and joy. Chen Hao picked up the last 0 elf and put him down. He smiled and said, okay, you don't need to look at the wooden house anymore. Go and have fun. Shui Yi smiled happily, and looked at the other 0-degree elves, saying in a milky voice, sisters, let's go to the river to play. Yeah. The 7 little guys held each other's hands and walked into the giant tree forest. Master, I'm back. A voice came. Chen Hao looked at the source of the voice, and saw Shataya standing there with a smile on her face. Chen Hao smiled and said, did it? Shataya smiled, of course. As she said that, Shataya took out a card and handed it to Chen Hao. Chen Hao was stunned. 1. Chen Hao took it and looked at it. Props Vulcan's card collection book. On this card, you can see a book depicting flame patterns. Shataya smiled and said, I asked Hafiz to help me get a card collection book. I turned all the spoils of today into cards and stored them in this card collection book. It's similar to the treasure chests made by Hafiz. Chen Hao looked at Shataya, thank you for your hard work. Shataya smiled, it must be easy for Shataya to help the master. Chen Hao nodded slightly, took the card, and went into the wooden house. Transform. Chen Hao sat in front of the table, holding a red card collection book with flame patterns in his hand. Chen Hao put the book on the table and opened the pages. In the card collection book, there are card slots, and the card slots are filled with cards. Chen Hao picked up one of them and looked at it. Emperor Core, the Emperor Core of the Ice Soldier. Chen Hao's eyes lit up slightly, water attribute Emperor Core. He thought of Shui Yi and the others, and he smiled, these little guys should grow up. I am immortal and I raise a divine beast in another world. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 177. In addition to the water attribute Emperor Core, Satya also had a lot of things in his loot today. The Emperor Core of the Earth attribute Earth and Heavenly Soldiers, the Emperor Core of the Wind attribute and Storm Heavenly Soldiers, and the Emperor Corps of the Wood Attribute Forest Heavenly Soldiers. In addition to these, there are also little Earth Spirit cards, little Wind Spirit cards, little Fire Spirit cards, little Light Spirit cards, little Wood Spirit cards, Water Spirit cards, and little Dark Spirit cards. The number of these things is at least 20. Chen Hao's mouth twitched when he saw the stacks of cards in front of him. Chen Hao just asked Satya to catch some Earth Spirits and Wind Spirits. As a result, Satya, based on the principle of being afraid of few and not afraid of many, directly collected all the little monsters with 7 attributes. And the number of each kind of monster is more than 20. If this is all cultivated, I guess I won't have to do anything. Headache. Chen Hao lay down on the wooden bed. Looking at the ceiling above, he muttered, "There are too many beasts, which is also a troublesome thing. I did a lot of exercise today and I feel a little sleepy. Forget it, ignore them for now and get some sleep first." Chen Hao thought and slowly closed his eyes. Thinking about what happened today, Chen Hao was a little confused. Although I encountered a lot of interesting things today, there are too many things and they are too troublesome, so it is better to take it easy. Time passed little by little. Chen Hao woke up and slowly opened his eyes. When he opened his eyes, Chen Hao saw a pair of blue eyes. The two stared at each other. "Master, are you okay?" a milky voice sounded. Hearing this voice, Chen Hao came back to his senses. Lying next to Chen Hao was Shui Yi. Shui Yi, who had the body of a child, was looking at him with worried eyes. Chen Hao withdrew his gaze and looked around, only to find someone beside him. Satya, Shui Yi, and the others, Yan Yi and the others, the big wolf, the second wolf, the third wolf and the others, Xiao Ying and the others, the big pig, the fire fox, and the big bear were all in the house. They all looked at him, with uneasiness and worry in their eyes. Chen Hao blinked and slowly sat up. He looked out the window, which was completely dark. "Is it already night?" Chen Hao withdrew his gaze, looked at Shui Yi and the others, and said with a smile, "What's wrong?" As soon as Shui got up, he said, "Master, you have been sleeping for a long time. From the evening to now, it is already early morning. The master has never slept so late before." Chen Hao was slightly startled. He smiled. "These little guys are paying attention to every move I make. The current self is different from the self in the previous life. In my previous life, during the holidays, I could stay up as late as I wanted, and no one cared about sleeping or waking up when I wanted. Now these little guys care. When they notice something unusual about themselves, they worry that something will happen to them." Chen Hao touched Shui Yi's little head and said, "Don't worry, I'm fine. I just slept a little longer. It just so happens that it's evening. Satya brought back a lot of Emperor cores today, just in time to feed them to you." With that said, Chen Hao picked up the Vulcan collection card book that he placed casually next to his pillow. "Master, let me do it." Suddenly, a voice came. Chen Hao took a look and saw the humanoid fire fox walking over. It looked at Chen Hao and said gracefully, "I'm here to help the master and distribute the Emperor's core to my companions." "You can't." Suddenly a voice came. "It is Satya who speaks." Satya walked towards Chen Hao with a smile on her face. She walked up to Chen Hao, looked at the fire fox and said, "You can't change the card back to the Emperor core. It's inconvenient for you to distribute it." "Master, I'll do it." When the fire fox heard this, it nodded slightly. Satya looked at Chen Hao and said with a smile, "Master, I will do it." "Are these two little guys worried that they are tired?" Chen Hao handed the Jika book card to Satya. He sat on the bedside and watched Satya materialize the Jika book card. Watching Satya turn the Emperor core cards into Emperor cores one by one, and then distribute them to the monsters and monsters. Looking at this scene, Chen Hao stretched his eyebrows. With an assistant like Satya, it is indeed much simpler. After all, Satya has the ability to turn things into cards and cards into things. Wait a moment. Chen Hao suddenly had an idea. Chen Hao remembered that in this world, in addition to gods who can turn things into cards, humans, demons, elves, etc. can also do it. As for the demons, aren't they the race created by Satya? Since the demons created by Satya can, does that mean that Satya has the ability to give certain creatures this ability? After watching Satya finish dividing the Emperor's core, it came back and handed the card collection card back to Chen Hao. Master, it's done. Chen Hao took it and looked at Satya. By the way, Satya, I remember that the demons you created before also had the ability to turn things into cards, and they could also rematerialize the cards into material ability. Can you give other beings this ability? Satya smiled. That is a blessing. Blessing? Chen Hao looked at Satya. Satya hummed, with God's blessing, God can share his ability with others, but this is an ability that only God can possess. I haven't fully recovered yet, so I can't do it. But Satya looked at Chen Hao and said with a smile, with the help of the master, I think I will be able to return to my peak soon and regain my previous abilities. God, Chen Hao raised his eyebrows, that's a pity. Actually, it's not a pity, Satya said with a smile, if I didn't lose those abilities, I wouldn't be able to meet the master again. Now I feel that I'm doing pretty well. Chen Hao blinked his eyes, and he smiled helplessly, you're really good at talking. Okay, it's almost time, you all go back to the book to rest. As he said that, Chen Hao's eyes swept over all the monsters on the field, and he smiled and said, I look forward to your evolution tomorrow. Master, good night, Shui Yi hurriedly said. Chen Hao looked at Shui Yi, and he smiled. Master, good night. Suddenly, a voice sounded next to him. It was the voice of these beasts in unison. Chen Hao was happy, good night. One by one, the little guys turned into cards. The cards appeared in front of Chen Hao. Chen Hao looked at the cards one by one, and a smile appeared on his face. Book. The book appeared in front of Chen Hao, and Chen Hao picked up the cards and put them into the card collection book one by one. Except for the big wolf that is already in the semi-emperor stage, all the other little guys have eaten the emperor core. If nothing unexpected happens, they can all evolve tomorrow. I am looking forward to it. What will these little guys become after they go from the saint stage to the semi-emperor stage? And Satya is only in the Beast King stage now. Can it continue to evolve tomorrow? What will it become when it evolves to the awakening stage? I am immortal and I raise a divine beast in another world. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 178. Chen Hao was expecting, lying on the wooden bed with his eyes closed. By the way, what should I do with the snow girls and snow monsters next? I went to the ice and snow mountain today and got a lot of snow girls and snow monsters. There were too many of them, and even the number of water attribute emperor cores brought by Satya was not enough for them. Chen Hao opened his eyes and sat up. Book. The book appeared out of thin air in front of him. Chen Hao opened the book and looked at the pile of snow girl cards. Choose a snow girl to cultivate, and put the other snow girls and snow monsters aside for now. Thinking of this, Chen Hao took out a snow girl card. Transform. The card disappeared. A chill spread. Chen Hao could feel the chill in the air all of a sudden. The figure of the snow girl appeared in front of Chen Hao. It slowly opened its icy eyes, looked at Chen Hao, and reflected Chen Hao's figure in its eyes. It said, Master. There was no expression on its face, no respect like the big pig, and no joy like the water one seeing the master. Snow girl, it is indeed a snow girl, her expression is like the frost that cannot be melted. However, this is normal. Because Snow Girl is a monster in the awakening period. Before she was captured by me and became my beast, she had experienced a lot of things and had her own personality. If I had trained her when she was still a little snow spirit, her personality would definitely be different. Chen Hao took out an Emperor Core card. Melt. The water attribute Emperor Core appeared in Chen Hao's hand. Seeing the Emperor Core, Snow Girl's eyes fell on the Emperor Core and stared at it. Wild monsters like Snow Girl are very clear about the importance of magic essence. Although it does not recognize the Emperor Core, the water attribute magic essence aura emitted by the Emperor Core is still very attractive to it. Eat this. Chen Hao handed the Emperor Core to Snow Girl. When Snow Girl heard it, she carefully stretched out her hands and took the Emperor Core. She put the Emperor Core, which was only the size of a bead, into her mouth. After eating, the Snow Girl looked at Chen Hao, waiting for Chen Hao's next order. Chen Hao smiled, "Go back and rest." The figure of the Snow Girl turned into a card. Chen Hao picked up the card floating in front of him and put it back into the book. He lay back on the bed with his eyes closed. He fell asleep unknowingly. The next day, Chen Hao got up early in the morning with great expectations, first solved his internal problems, and then took a comfortable bath. He left the wooden house. The wind blew, and it felt very pleasant. Chen Hao, who had a good night's rest, was in a good mood. Well, a day has passed, and then we can see what these little guys have become. The second wolf and the third wolf ate the Emperor Core yesterday, and they should have entered the semi-emperor stage. When the second wolf was in the saint stage, it was the swallowing giant wing wolf. What about now? Chen Hao took a look. Semi-emperor stage giant wing emperor. At first glance, Chen Hao's eyebrows relaxed slightly, and a smile appeared on his face. What a cool name. Chen Hao took the card out of the book. The bright sunshine fell on the card. Chen Hao could clearly see the picture on the card. On the picture, there was a giant wolf with dark red hair and muscular body. Behind the giant wolf was a pair of huge dark red wings, and it was grinning with fangs and looked fierce. Seeing this appearance, Chen Hao didn't feel anything at first, but he couldn't help but think of Erlang's sissy others. Chen Hao's body was covered with goosebumps. Not only can you not judge a person by his appearance, but you can't judge an animal by its appearance either. Chen Hao muttered. Chen Hao waved his hand, and the card flew out. Transform. Accompanied by Chen Hao's voice, it fell. The card disappeared, and at the moment the card disappeared, boom 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 boom. A loud noise sounded. The huge trees in front of them broke and fell down. After the giant tree fell, it hit the ground with a series of loud noises. Dust flew up in front of him. When Chen Hao saw this, he raised his head and looked at the two wolves in front of him. His pupils condensed slightly. Is it so big? In this giant tree forest, the shortest tree is at least 50 or 60 meters. That height is already very scary. In front of these giant trees, even the dragons don't look very big. But now, a behemoth taller than these giant trees appeared in front of Chen Hao. It is estimated to be nearly 100 meters tall, and the muscles all over its body are like huge rocks. The giant winged emperor in front of him is the real mountain. As the giant winged emperor, the second wolf first looked around, then lowered his head. It saw Chen Hao, and when it saw Chen Hao standing in front of the wooden house, the giant winged emperor opened his mouth and smiled and said, "Master, how are my muscles?" It was really too big, and because it was too big, the sound it made was like thunder. The leaves of the giant trees around rustled. Chen Hao was slightly startled when he heard what Erlang said. Then, Chen Hao thought of what happened yesterday morning, when he exaggerated the wolf's abdominal muscles and was known by this guy. Chen Hao smiled helplessly. This guy is really awesome. He still remembers what happened yesterday morning. Not bad, the muscles are great, Chen Hao said with a smile. When Erlang heard this, his naturally fierce face opened his mouth, his eyes became crescent-shaped, and his face was full of joy. Chen Hao smiled, "You are too big now. My neck is uncomfortable when I tilt my head up." Let's change back to human form. Okay, the second wolf responded. Its huge body like a mountain began to shrink. Under Chen Hao's gaze, the second wolf's body turned into a human form. This is a young man with a happy smile on his face. Master, I'm back. Chen Hao looked at the second wolf for a while. The second wolf in beast form has changed a lot, but the human form is the same, there is no difference. The second wolf has changed a lot, I wonder how the third wolf is doing. Chen Hao couldn't help but think of the big wolf, the second wolf, and the third wolf when they were still cubs. So small, but now they have grown like a mountain. Time flies. Chen Hao picked up the card of the third wolf. Before eating the Emperor core, the third wolf was a world-destroying hurricane wolf in the Saint stage. And now? Chen Hao took a look. Half-Emperor stage Wind Emperor. Chen Hao's heart moved. This name is as simple as the Thunder Emperor of the Big Wolf. On the card picture, there is the posture of the three wolves. It is a wolf with light blue hair, white belly, and flowing hair all over its body. The posture of the three wolves in this picture is similar to when it was still the Wind Wolf King. However, compared with when it was the Wind Wolf King, its hair is longer and more flowing. Other than that, there is not much difference. However, the half-emperor period, like the second wolf, can directly become like a mountain. Looking at this picture, the three wolves have not changed much. Let's take a look. Thinking about it, the card in Chen Hao's hand disappeared. A figure appeared in front of Chen Hao. Seeing it, Chen Hao was slightly startled. Didn't it get bigger? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I am immortal and I raise a divine beast in another world. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 179. The three wolves in front of Chen Hao were about 3 meters tall. Not only did they not get bigger, they were even smaller than the hurricane wolf that destroyed the world. The only difference is that the three wolves are surrounded by a transparent cover, which seems to be made of wind. The hair of the three wolves is fluttering and looks quite elegant. It opened its eyes, looked at Chen Hao, and said, Master. Hearing this, Chen Hao smiled and said, How do you feel? When the three wolves heard this, they moved around and then jumped up. Chen Hao was slightly startled. I saw three wolves stepping on the air. They obviously have no wings, but they can stand in the air. Chen Hao looked carefully and could see the invisible wind moving under the feet of the three wolves. Chen Hao understood, it was the wind. The three wolves don't need wings, they can fly on the wind. The three wolves looked at Chen Hao. Master, I feel that my use of wind magic has gone a step further. Hearing this, Chen Hao smiled, that's for sure, otherwise your name as Wind Emperor would be in vain. With that said, Chen Hao withdrew his gaze and looked at the book in front of him. Chen Hao first called out the big wolf, and at the same time called out the Wind and Fire Wolf King who had evolved to the Beast King stage. After the Wind and Fire Wolf King came out. This guy is much larger than when he was a cub, and his current size is similar to the current three wolves. After it came out, it opened its red eyes and looked at Chen Hao. The appearance is majestic. The Wind and Fire Wolf King looked at Chen Hao, Master. With the sound, Chen Hao's eyebrows stretched. The voice of the Wind and Fire Wolf King is a neutral female voice. Chen Hao was startled. It turned out that this guy was a female wolf. No wonder those three guys from the three wolves were so fond of it. Chen Hao subconsciously looked at the big wolf and the others, and found that the big wolf and the others were looking directly at the Wind and Fire Wolf King. Seeing this, Chen Hao took a special look at Erlang. It seemed that this guy was just a pervert on the surface, but he was still a man on the inside. Chen Hao looked at the Wind and Fire Wolf King and said with a smile, Go play with the big wolves and let them help you find food. When the Wind and Fire Wolf King heard this, he nodded slightly, Okay, Master. It turned and walked towards the big wolf and the others. The big wolf showed an honest smile. Little sister, let's go to the forest to find food. I'm coming too, Erlang said quickly. The three wolves looked at it, and it just smiled and didn't say anything. The wind and fire wolf king nodded, and looked at the three wolves subconsciously. See this? Chen Hao stretched his eyebrows. It seems that these three little guys are all interested in this female wolf. I wonder who can hold the beauty back. However, looking at the situation, the female wolf didn't have many choices. Chen Hao withdrew his gaze and let the children resolve their emotional life. If that doesn't work, if they want to find a partner, you can also let them go to the World of Warcraft forest to force one or two little things. Chen Hao didn't care. Next is Big Bear. When the Big Bear enters the holy period, it is an ancient bear. And now, Half Emperor period Mountain Emperor. Chen Hao took a look and stretched his eyebrows. The big wolf is the Thunder Emperor, the three wolves are the Wind Emperor, and the ancient bear is the Mountain Emperor. So isn't the Fire Fox the Fire Emperor? Thinking about Chen Hao, he looked at Firefox. The Fire Fox that enters the holy period is the Burning Sky Five-Tailed Fox. And now it's Half Emperor period Half Emperor Six-Tailed Fox. Chen Hao blinked. It's not that. But Chen Hao thought for a moment and released the Mountain Emperor and Half Emperor Six-Tailed Fox. When Shan Di appeared, Chen Hao was immediately shocked. The posture of the big bear is still that of a humanoid bear, but its size is too shocking. The body of the big bear is made of rocks and looks like a bear. It is so big that it is nearly 100 meters tall. His body is so big that it seems he can touch the clouds. The big bear opened its eyes. It looked at Chen Hao below. Its body was slowly covered with a golden halo, and its body began to shrink and return to its human form. As the half-emperor six-tailed fox, Firefox has maintained its human form since its appearance. Judging from the human form, the big bear and the Firefox have not changed much. But their animal forms have obviously evolved. Shandy is really big. Master Firefox said gracefully. Dakshan raised his hand, put it in front of his chest, and saluted Chen Hao, Master. Chen Hao nodded slightly and looked at Huohu. Huohu, I want to ask you something. Firefox's red eyes were glowing. Master, please tell me. Chen Hao crossed his hands on his chest. In your evolutionary path, is there the Fire Emperor's evolutionary path? Hearing this, Firefox nodded slightly. Yes, Fire Emperor is a comprehensive improvement, which can improve magic, strength, and defense. Half-Emperor Six-Tailed Fox's main improvement is magic. In terms of comprehensive combat power, Half-Emperor Six-Tailed Fox not as good as the Fire Emperor. However, if the Half-Emperor Six-Tailed Fox continues to evolve, it can become even more powerful in the future. Sure enough, it was just as Chen Hao guessed. At the Half-Emperor stage, all monsters can have this choice. Suddenly, Chen Hao thought of the Fire Heavenly Soldiers. He looked at the Fire Fox. In addition to the evolution paths of the Six-Tailed Fox and the Fire Emperor, do you have an evolutionary path for the Fire Heavenly Soldiers? Firefox shook his head. Master, there is no such thing. Well, the Heavenly Soldier of Fire, is it the evolutionary path of the little fire spirit, so the Fire Fox does not have this path? Or is it that the Fire Heavenly Soldiers only exist in the God's domain? Is it an evolutionary route specially created by God? This is also possible. Chen Hao's eyes fell on the book. The big pig has also evolved. Before the big pig evolved, it was a sacred ancient tree in the saint stage, and now Half-Emperor stage mysterious island. Chen Hao's pupils condensed slightly. This is. On the picture on the card, you can see an island floating in the air. Description: Mysterious Island, a wood-attributed monster, evolved from a mutation of a sacred ancient tree, and can float in the air on a giant mysterious island. This guy, every evolution makes people feel shocked. Chen Hao stretched his eyebrows. You directly gave up the posture of a creature and turned into the posture of an island, just to make me live comfortably. You are really amazing. Chen Hao waved his hand. Transform. A young man appeared in front of Chen Hao, who was the human form of the big pig. The big pig slowly opened its eyes and looked at Chen Hao. It placed its hands on its chest and saluted Chen Hao slightly. Master. Chen Hao stretched his eyebrows. Mysterious island, what's the situation? The big pig smiled when he heard it. Mysterious island is the big pig's current body. It is an island that can float in the air and move. In this way, the master lives on it and can take the master wherever he wants to go. In addition to this, I have the ability to be invisible and can hide. If the master does not want to be seen by others, others cannot see it. Chen Hao was helpless, and he smiled helplessly and said, "You are really good." There was joy in the big pig's eyes. It did all this just to get a compliment from Chen Hao. Although Chen Hao said this helplessly, it was obviously a happy thing in the eyes of the big pig. I am immortal and I raise a divine beast in another world. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 180. Chen Hao also knew Big Pig's character, so he didn't say much about it, as long as it liked it. Water, where are they? Chen Hao looked at the sky. Water One and the others also evolved from the Zero Spirit. Half-Emperor period Ice Angel. Chen Hao was startled. Angel. Chen Hao never expected that this little angel would actually become an angel. Chen Hao scanned the other zero-degree elves, and at first glance, he found that these little guys were all unified, and they all turned into ice angels. It's time for these little guys to grow up. Chen Hao smiled and took out the card. Change. The card disappeared. As the card disappeared, Chen Hao could feel a chill coming over him. A figure appeared in front of Chen Hao. Standing next to Chen Hao was a man dressed in white with a pair of white wings behind him and long silver hair. This is Shui Yi, and Shui Yi's current body shape is that of an adult angel. It had its eyes closed, and slowly opened them, revealing a pair of ice crystal eyes. It looked at Chen Hao, its eyes reflecting Chen Hao's figure. Its eyes lit up slightly, and there was a smile on its face. Master. The voice is no longer milky. Shui Yi also seemed to be aware of the change in his voice. He subconsciously raised his hand and put it on his neck, then looked at Chen Hao. Master, Shui Yi's evolutionary path is not as small as that of a small one, so it can't be lifted. Hi. It's a bit lost. Chen Hao smiled. If this little guy didn't have the body shape of a child in the next evolutionary path, he would probably continue to be a child. Fortunately, there are no children in Elf Zero's next route, otherwise it would really not grow up. Chen Hao chose to reach out and touched Shui Yi's little head. Shui Yi was startled, with its eyes closed and joy on its face. Enjoying Chen Hao's comfort, Chen Hao said with a smile, Shui Yi has grown up, and it's pretty good now. Chen Hao took back his hand. After Shui heard it, a smile appeared on his face. As long as the master likes it. Chen Hao smiled. Your other sisters have also become ice angels. You will take them out to play together later. Remember not to use large-scale magic. Shui Yi hummed and said with a smile, don't worry, master, Sister Qinglu told me before that we know how to use magic. Chen Hao nodded slightly. Chen Hao smiled, that's good. Afterwards, Chen Hao released the other ice angels and asked them to go out to play with Shui Yi. In addition to the ice angels, the ice crystal holy rock men have also evolved. Just as Chen Hao expected, the ice crystal holy rock people have always chosen to evolve comprehensively, and now they have also evolved into the comprehensively improved ice rock emperor. As for the others, Chen Hao didn't bother to read more. There are too many, and it would be too time-consuming to study slowly. Chen Hao released all the monsters that had evolved to the half-emperor stage. As for the other monsters that were fed the emperor core and whose level had not yet reached the half-emperor stage, Chen Hao did not release them. Among these beasts, the one that attracted Chen Hao's attention the most was Satya. Yesterday's Satya was in the Beast King stage, but today's Satya has reached the awakening stage. Awakening period. The awakened Queen of Darkness. Description: the awakened Queen of Darkness, a dark attribute monster, evolved from the awakening of the Queen of Darkness. It has strength comparable to that of ordinary monsters. The half-emperor period, the emperor period, the divine general period, and the divine king period. You are truly worthy of being a god. The awakening stage alone is comparable to the stage of a god general, Chen Hao muttered. The card disappeared and Satya's figure appeared in front of Chen Hao. Satya looked at Chen Hao, and there was a smile on his face. Master. Chen Hao nodded slightly. Suddenly, Satya's smile faded slightly. She frowned, and looked in one direction. Who is there? After hearing what Satya said, Chen Hao looked in the direction Satya was looking at. There was a chair over there, nothing but the chair, it was empty. Satya frowned and said calmly, Rose, stop hiding, I have already felt your wind magic element. Ross is the name of the god of storms. When Chen Hao was confused, Kinglu's voice came from beside him. Chen Hao came to his senses and stretched his eyebrows. Satya, I didn't expect that you could recover to this extent. A voice sounded in the empty place. When the sound sounded, Xiaoying, Tuyi, Flower Demon and others who were still here showed vigilant looks and stared over there. Chen Hao said, Hua. All the other beasts on the field except Satya were turned into cards. Chen Hao stretched out his hand to put away the cards, and then looked in the direction of the sound. This guy can stay there so that other beasts except Satya can't feel it, which means that he has similar strength to Satya. It can be said that Feng Shen and Satya have a deep hatred. You must know that Feng Shen created 3 races, 2 of which were slaughtered by Satya's demons. The hatred between the wind god Ross and Satya is an undying hatred. If a fight breaks out, these little guys shouldn't be affected, so it's best to put them away. Following Ross's voice, a figure appeared in the empty place just now. This is a handsome man with long white hair and wearing exquisite green clothes. The man was sitting on a chair, crossing his legs and looking over here. His pupils were blue, and he stared at Chataya with a chill in his eyes. He slowly stood up, and after standing up, his body was surrounded by a transparent wind magic shield. He slowly flew into the air, and stared at Chataya. Chataya, you should not have forgotten what you did 30,000 years ago. Since you are alive, let's continue to settle the accounts of the past. When Chataya heard it, he frowned and looked at Chen Hao subconsciously. Chen Hao noticed Chataya's sight, and he smiled, don't worry about me. As he said, Chen Hao looked at the wind god Ross and said with a smile, however, I have a suggestion. You'd better fight in another place. There are many creatures on Wolong Island. If it is destroyed, it will not be good. Ross narrowed his eyes and stared at Chataya. Chataya snorted, if you want revenge, then follow me. After the voice fell, Chataya moved his body and turned directly into a black light and flew high into the sky. Ross looked at this, and it moved its body, turned into a green light, and chased after Chataya. Seeing this, Chen Hao said, I have to follow. Chen Hao remembered that Chataya said that Ross was also seriously injured in the battle 30,000 years ago. Since Chataya was able to find Ross, does it mean that Ross is now about the same strength as Chataya? If the two are about the same strength, they will definitely get hurt in a fight. If Ross is injured. Chen Hao took out the trap rope card from the book. He smiled.